I wanted to round out this series with a painting video of the scourges, but then I realised if you've been following the series so far, then you actually already know how to paint the scourges. Mostly. To be brief, base them with matte black, then do an imperial purple layer, then do sequential layers for the green armour, guns, and hair from the Cabalites video, and then you're pretty much there. The only difference really comes with the wings, which are all painted black, and then I sprayed gloss varnish over the bat wings, and then did a fine dry brush with Administratum Grey. And then for the feather wings, it's just lightly dry brushing with different greys, adjusting the firmness to get a nice gradient across the wings. Hit up the base and, well, you're done. So what's left to do in this Drukhari series then? Well, one part of the hobby is painting, and the other main one that I do, at least, is gaming. I've managed to get a good few games in with the Drukhari, so I think I'll be able to give you a bit of an overview of what they're like to play as. A review, if you will. I've managed to get a number of games in at around the 1,000 point mark, and this is more aimed at a casual player, maybe if you're new to the Drukhari. Doesn't mean that you have to leave if you're more experienced though. So, what do they like to play as? Well, in a word, they're hard. Yeah, hard really covers it. But when you pull back that cover, they are probably one of the most rewarding 40k factions that I have ever played with. And I've played a few different factions at this point. Drukhari aren't a particularly common faction either. They're renowned as being a tough faction to play as. I played in several of the leagues hosted at Bad Moon Cafe in London when I was playing a bit more competitively. Across the hundreds of games that I've played at this point, in 8th, 9th and 10th editions, I've only come across them once. Obviously, your mileage may vary in your local gaming scene, but I thought I would take a moment to see if I could maybe do Games Workshop's job and sell you on these sexy space pirates. So, how do they play? Well, the best way I can think of describing Drukhari is with, well, a toaster. If you put a fork in a toaster, you're going to have a bad time. But if you put a nice fresh sliced bit of bread in, well, we've got some toast. This analogy may need work. But what does this have to do with Drukhari? Well, Drukhari units are super optimized at absolutely toasting certain things, but will get completely zapped if you put them into the wrong thing.
Your hand is jammed in the toaster!
Let's take the scourges for example. They have a host of different weapon options. Shard carbines, shredders, blasters, blast pistols, and I dare you to guess which one is which without reference because I only know the Dark Lance one. Where even are you? Now, each of them have a different use case. The Shredder, for example, is effectively an 18-inch range flamer. It's got D6 torrent attacks, and if you equip all of your Scourges, minus the leader, who can only ever take a Shard Carbine or a pistol, with the Shredders, that means you're potentially lashing out 24 auto-hitting Strength 6 shots, which is a lot of shreddies. Now, if you want to pop some tanks, then you have an absolute litany of ways to make sure your friendly Astra Militarum player ensures that they're wearing their best brown trousers, as Feathers McGraw here is going to absolutely ruin their day.
Get me out of these traps!
They can be equipped with various anti-tank weaponry, the aforementioned Dark Lances, but my personal favourite in anti-tank weaponry is the Drukhari Haywire Blaster. 2 shots each, hitting on 4s that can get +1 to hit if you're feeling really brave and don't want to move them before they shoot. They have a meager strength 3 shot. That doesn't sound particularly intimidating. But then they have the fantastic combination of anti-vehicle 4+ and devastating wounds, meaning for each roll of a 4 against that nice toughness 12 Land Raider, and it will be taking flat 3 damage, with no saves allowed. Ouch. Now, most of the guns have some purpose to them like this. The regular armament across the entire range are splinter weapons in the form of pistols, rifles, and a cannon. These all have anti-infantry 3+, meaning any shots fired at anything from a casual guardsman to a toughness 6 possessed Chaos Space Marine will all suffer a wound on a 3+, which is very tasty. However, and here's the rub, those regular old splinter rifles are a trivial toughness 2, meaning most of the time you'll be wounding anything else on a 6. And against armies like the Tyranids, all of your anti-stuff is useless against all of the various monsters. Dark Lances sound nice, but when you get used to auto-damaging a flat 3 wounds on vehicles at 4, it all starts getting a bit feels bad. So that's the toast. If you put the guns into the right things, you'll likely get some golden brown. If you go up against the wrong thing, or up against the wrong opponent, you might as well hand in your dice bag and go home. If the opponent is left standing, you are a squishy space elf. Your armor is weak and your flesh is bare. You will get absolutely obliterated if you're caught out of position.
It's in there again! Ah, no!
Combat for the Dark Elves is similar. You need to wield your witches and incubi like a homunculi wielding a scalpel, with precision. If you play your elves carefully, you can excise your opponent's units from across the board, like a homunculi carefully removing a captive guardsman's heart while they're still awake. However, one slip-up, one miscalculation, and it's game over. Let's take the incubi. You need to make sure they're positioned in the right place at the right time in order to deal maximum damage and have your game time economy set up to serve them properly. I've run my 10 protecting my Archon as she leads my raiding party to harvest more prizes for the gladiator pits. They'll ride shotgun in my Raider, their sexy space boats. You'll have to carefully chart your route, navigating the terrain and preemptively hiding from your opponent's anti-tank weaponry, ready to pounce on whatever high-value target they place onto an objective. When it's go time, you can send your Raider careening around the board with its insanely fast 14-inch movement. If you're running the Sky Splinter Assault Detachment, which is the only really usable one at the moment, you can spend a command point to allow them to get out and charge. And if you've built your army properly, you can have your Archon carry the Nightmare Shroud, meaning your opponent cannot react with an Overwatch stratagem against the incubi. Then, when you succeed your charge roll, make sure you have access to your faction's main ability, Power Through Pain. This grants you a number of tokens at the beginning of the game, and based on the point size of your game, you get a number of tokens that you can spend to empower your units. Give them a little buff in the movement or charge phases, and your units will be able to reroll failed advances and charges. Empower in the shooting or fight phases, and your units become much deadlier, allowing them to reroll their hit rolls, and if it's the fight phase, you get an extra pip of armor penetration, making it harder for your opponent to dodge your blades. Timing these at the right moment will reward you, for if you're able to wipe out an enemy unit, you get a Power Through Pain token added back into your stash, allowing you to continue your raid. So let's empower the incubi so you can spend a Power Through Pain token so your incubi reroll their hit rolls. And because they're being led by an Archon, they're also re-rolling their wound rolls. Adding to this elvish snowball, because they got out of a transport this turn and charged, they also get the Lance ability, giving them +1 to their wound rolls. And as it's the fight phase, they get that additional pip of armor penetration, meaning you're dealing out a scarcely believable 30 attacks, re-rolling everything and dealing 2 wounds each. And you'll always be wounding on at least a 5, potentially dealing out 60 damage. But again, make a slight misplay in that, from not having the command points to spend on disembarking and charging, not having a Power Through Pain token, not taking the Nightmare Shroud. don't forget to take the Nightmare Shroud. Or simply failing a charge roll and you're on your Todd, sat in the middle of a war zone, your armor weak, your flesh bare. In my game against the Tyranids, I didn't take the Nightmare Shroud, meaning my opponent was able to do an overwatch on my incubi. In the preceding shots, killing just 2 of my incubi. That may seem trivial in a unit of 10, but because I was 2 models down, I was unable to kill the foul beast, leaving that unit on just 1 wound. It then managed to begin annihilating the incubi, and when they got to fight again next turn, because they hadn't killed the beast, they didn't get that additional power through pain token, which meant no re-rolling hits, no re-rolling wounds, and they hadn't charged out of a vehicle, so no lance and no luck. If, on the other hand, I had given them that Nightmare Shroud, it likely would have saved their asses, allowing them to down the beast, get that extra power through pain token, and continue their raid for the Cabals of Comera. And that's the Drukhari, the Dark Eldar, the sexy space pirates. As I said at the outset, they are a hard faction to play, and your first few games will have you sent to the pits for your incompetence. But when you get how they are supposed to work and you start landing your shots true, they give you the power to keep your raid going and your opponent on their toes. This is being recorded for the current 10th edition rule set, but I imagine they'll be somewhat similar throughout 10th and into 11th, as I think 11th will be a bit of a refinement edition. We'll find out in 2 years if Games Workshop keep up their normal rule set release routine. Just for your information here, you've seen most of the stuff that I painted for this army throughout my videos, but I did also do some witches and the succubus, which I started working on before properly recording the series. With this force, I've played games at just over the 1,000 point mark per side, which I felt gave me a decent overview for the rules. I haven't played with any of the homunculus coven stuff, so the racks, grotesques, homunculi, but I'll return to that when I've painted some up, probably at some point in the next year. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this helpful, please consider giving me a cheeky little subscribe and like of the video. That really, really helps. Let me know what you think of this review format. I'm really trying to find a style that kind of works for me at this stage, so any guidance is really, really appreciated. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.